We are back now on this Friday morning with a compelling interview with George Floyd's uncle, Selwyn Jones, conducted by a local podcaster, Theo Acker, and her podcast, Think Theo. Here is part of that interview.
Take me back to last May and what happened and how you reacted the next day. How did you feel? Did you sleep that night at all? How many days did you go without sleeping?
I don't know, probably 5 or 6 days without sleeping.
What about eating?
And there began for George Floyd's family a journey that they probably had never imagined, and a shift in our culture, really, that they now are leading, and Selwyn seems to be picking up that torch. Theo Acker is joining us this morning live from her home with more on this. Good morning to you, Theo.
Good morning, Ron. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I have to ask you, this is the second time you've landed a high-profile interview. How have you been able to, as an up-and-coming podcaster, do you think, appeal to these folks in a way that they feel comfortable to sit down with you?
You know, Ron, that's something that I asked myself, and I realized the very reason that I reached out to them in the first place is the reason that they responded. I don't want to necessarily talk about the event. I want to talk about how they're doing after. Because, you know, as I said when I was on with you about Brandon Beavers, it's not so much what I didn't want to talk about the murder. I wanted to talk about how he was doing after. And I think they just really want to talk about that because, once again, nobody's asking Selwyn Jones how he and his family are coping and making it through, and they're only thinking about how, you know, the event took place.
Yeah, and we're going to show another moment from your interview here, but first I want to ask you, what were your impressions of where Selwyn is now in his life in terms of feeling a sense of responsibility in his nephew's name to move forward and try to make a difference with a movement that has been going on for some time, but really hit a pinnacle and a turning point, a tipping point, I should say, with the death of his nephew?
You know, just as Brandon Beavers is on a mission to find out who murdered his wife, Selwyn Jones is on a mission to change things that he sees and others have seen, you know, that need to be changed in the Great Divide, you know, people say. But this is not so much a political thing, and Selwyn and I kept coming back to that, and he kept bringing me back to that. This isn't a right or left, it's a pain, it's a humanity issue. Yeah. So his mission right now is stronger than his emotion, which is my, you know, phrase of what I've been saying to myself, but he's on a mission to try to make the world a better place to be.
Let's listen again, Theo, to another portion of your interview, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Did you cry?
Men are not supposed to cry. But yes, I have.
Okay.
I could cry every day of my life, and generally I do cry every day of my life. When I sit back and I think of the task that I have in front of me, I have no other choice but to cry. Because I literally...
Interesting. This is a man who, we should say, I believe over the course of 5 or 7 years in the 90s was an NFL player for a number of teams. So this is a football player. This is a man who considers himself the rock of his family, and yet he's admitting that the pain of this is so deep. Did you walk away with this with any sense that he knows he's not alone?
I'm so glad you said that, Ron. That is what I'm learning through all of this. You know, being the daughter of a minister my entire life, being a public school teacher, one thing, and now doing the podcast and the video cast, one thing that I'm learning is people just want to know that they're not alone in this, which is why I'm, you know, writing my book, My Grief Is Not Like Yours, because I want others to feel like they're not alone. You know, I felt like after my mom's accident, I didn't have a book that I could kind of put my hands on other than the Bible sometimes, you know, but I didn't have a book that hit me as hard as I wanted to be hit, which is why I feel like these people are responding so well.
I think so too, Theo. And, you know, you can just sense as you're talking to him that you are approaching it from a place of understanding. You can never put yourself in his shoes, but we've all experienced a level of grief, a level of loss, and from that point of view, we're more alike than we are different. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your podcast series, and you can check out Think Theo. It is an audio and video podcast at thinktheo.com. You can also follow Theo on Twitter, and it is a compelling interview in its entirety.